Okay, fabulous. Just move my interface here. Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining us this afternoon to discuss the NVCOG Regional Open Space Inventory. We're really excited to launch this project with help from partners like you. Please note that the presentation is being recorded. My name is Christine O'Neill, and I'm an environmental planner serving as the manager for this project. For those who are unfamiliar, we are the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments, or NVCOG. We support 19 communities in West Central Connecticut with planning activities related to transportation, environment, land use, brownfields, GIS, and a whole bunch more. Our goals for today's session are to review the importance of regional planning for open space, describe this particular project, and explain what we'll need from you, our stakeholders. We encourage you to introduce yourself by stating your name and role in the text chat feature. Please also put any questions that arise during the presentation in the chat, and we'll answer them at the end. Thank you so much, and let's get started. Okay, so open space itself is defined in the Connecticut General Statutes for the purpose of property tax assessments. It's also referenced in several other statutes related to land use, conservation commissions, and public parks. Open space is also discussed in policy and planning documents like the State Plan of Conservation and Development and the Connecticut Deep Green Plan. So there's really no single definitive source for a definition of open space that applies across these different sectors. Because of this room for interpretation, towns might delineate and track their open space a little differently. Some towns might only track what we traditionally associate with the term, like forests or wildlife preserves, and others might include farmland, recreational areas, and historic sites. Moreover, each town has different methods for record keeping and varying levels of capacity to keep those lists and maps up to date. For those reasons, it's not really easy to get a good regional picture of open space. So we've identified this as a challenge in the Naugatuck Valley. A quick note, we're not trying to select any one particular definition and impose it on our towns. We're just trying to reconcile the discrepancies so we can create a uniform regional tool. And I'll briefly talk about why it is important for us to look at open space. So as you can see here from the slide, and I'm sure as most of you already know, open space can bring an incredible breadth of benefits to a community. On the public health side, sports fields, parks, multi-use trails provide opportunities for exercise and healthy lifestyles. There's also a positive correlation between access to green space and improved mental health. On a more molecular level, we know that healthy ecosystems filter pollution. According to the National Recreation and Park Association, trees in United States urban parks remove air pollution equivalent to $500 million per year in investment. On the municipal planning side, open space plays a really important role in balancing development and conservation. Think about concerts or festivals you may have attended on a village green or a small city park that offers a little rest for your eyes among all the gray built infrastructure. Prominent open space in a municipality can also create a sense of community identity. A town like Bethlehem strongly identifies with its rural features. Woodbury is really proud of its historical roots, and Naugatuck prides itself on its extensive trail network. On the economic side, working lands generate income for farmers and produce valuable crops that sustain our communities. And of course, I'm sure most of you know, proximity to open space has been shown to raise property values, and that in turn increases tax revenue. On the environmental side, it's pretty obvious, but I'll just briefly mention that open space helps us fight climate change, protects biodiversity, and preserves critical habitat for native species. We know that the biggest impact of climate change in this region is flooding. I'm sure all of you have seen it in your own communities. Open space allows stormwater from heavy rains to infiltrate back into the ground rather than accumulating on the blacktop and causing these storm surges and flooding that can cause thousands of dollars in property damage and injuries. So these benefits don't just stop at political borders. For all these reasons and more, NVCOG wants to create a regional open space inventory, or I should say update our regional open space inventory to map and track open space in the Valley. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Aaron to discuss some of the work we've done so far.
Thanks, Christine. So I'm Aaron Budrus. I'm the Environmental Planning Director here at NVCOG. And I just want to give you a little bit of context and sort of explain what NVCOG has been doing previously with open space data, and why we think it's so important to have really good data about our open space. So our COG and our predecessor organizations have been actively tracking open space for decades. We maintain an open space database and GIS data about all of our known open spaces in the region. And to get all of that data, we really rely on towns and land trusts and other partners, as well as our town GIS vendors who map the region. And we provide this information back to all of you and to our towns with, in printable and interactive maps that we host on our website and through a lot of other ways. Next slide, please. And we use that data and collect it for a number of reasons. First of all, it informs our regional plan of conservation and development that we update every 10 years, and we're currently working on right now. The POCD is an advisory policy document which will help guide regional development investment in the NVCOG region over the next 10 years. So for that, we really want to know the needs of our residents and future residents and how those needs are being met, highlight opportunities, and encourage conservation based on need. We also provide assistance to towns and land trusts and all of our partners really with, we help with writing grant applications. We write support letters for projects. We can provide mapping and conduct analysis on open spaces if you're looking for, looking to go get some funding for something. We've also assisted partners with property inventories and created kiosk maps and pamphlets. And all of this is really difficult without good open space data. Next slide, please. And getting good data can be difficult. The first reason is that we have 19 municipalities, all of them hold open space, and we have a bunch of other active agencies and organizations working in our region that hold open space. So we have over 22 land trusts and other conservation nonprofits active in our region. We have, if I counted correctly, 8 different water companies and water departments that hold property. We have state agencies, mostly DEP, but other state agencies also hold land in our region. Federal agencies, the Army Corps of Engineers is a pretty big property owner in our region for all of the flood risk reduction projects like Thomason Dam and Hop Brook Lake. And there's other private and other landholders as well that all hold open space, and all of them have different motives and goals in doing so. So that can make it difficult. Next slide, please. But we have other issues as well. Like I said, we don't claim that our data is complete. It isn't for a few reasons. Like I said, we really rely on our municipalities and partners to get our data and to keep it up to date, and engagement with them varies across the region. Towns also have really different ideas about what open space is and what types of property should be included in inventories like this. And it's difficult sometimes to sort out what property should be considered protected and which should not. The classification system that we had used previously was not perfect. It sort of classified properties by a mix of owner type, use, protection type, and that really made analysis difficult. And historically, there was no data standard, so comparison with our data to data from other regions or even statewide was pretty much impossible. Next slide. So a few years ago, we were really involved with the development of an open space data schema that's currently being used by Sustainable CT. Sustainable CT is a voluntary certification system for municipalities, wherein towns elect to undertake actions from a menu of options to receive credit toward different levels of Sustainable CT certification. One of those actions is to develop an open space inventory, and Sustainable CT requires this schema be used to receive credit. So we've adopted this system, and we've put all of our data into it. But there's a lot of information that can be tracked here that we just do not have information for on our open spaces. So primarily it's the whether or how properties are protected. That's really the big one. But also the primary function and secondary function of the properties, and things like that. So we've gotten our data into this system and into this schema, and now's the time to really sort of make it really robust and collect all of this information. And we knew that was going to be a big project to do that. So a few years ago, and we've started looking for funding that would enable us to spend a lot of time on this. And I'll turn it back over to Christine to talk about the funding that we found and the funding that we have to do this project now.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron. Yes, I think Aaron did a really good job of establishing the need, why this is so important for us to do. To that end, we reached out to our Congress people last year and put in a congressionally directed spending request to update and build out the open space information that we have. We were awarded $92,000 through the U.S. Forest Service. And a shout out to Carl, our grant administrator from the U.S. Forest Service, who has joined us today on the call. So thanks for stopping by, Carl. Our goal here is to update our inventory so that it remains a useful planning tool for all our open space stakeholders, but also it can serve as a starting point for one of our long-term goals of actually establishing an open space plan for the region. So the completion of this project should really yield two specific deliverables. One would be the updated open space map, which will be fed by a GIS database, and we're going to share that information with our municipalities. And the second part is a narrative report that contains municipality-specific annexes. The report is basically going to summarize the information from the viewer in narrative form and then highlight inconsistencies we might find regarding level of protection or calling out priority parcels, which we'll talk about in a moment. So this is sort of how we see it going. We have planned this project to span 2 years, although the terms of the grant allow us 3 with some potential extensions. Right now, the anticipated end date is summer of 2025. The first half of our process to the left of that vertical blue line involves working with you guys, with our stakeholders and our partners to gather information. We'll have conversations and meetings, review public records and documents, and update our GIS viewer with the information that we find. We'll need to engage our municipalities, land trusts, and water companies in each of these 19 towns in the valley to build a comprehensive regional inventory. Then on the right side of the blue line is our second half. That's when we're writing the report with an annex for each municipality. Oh, I'm sorry. Oops. And these annexes will likely include spotlights on what we're calling priority parcels. These are pieces of open space that are going to sort of emerge to us throughout our research as needing special attention or needing more information. And so we'll really dive deep into those in the annexes. And then we share a draft with you. We'll share a draft of the map. We'll share a draft of the report. We'll get feedback from our stakeholders and make sure that our goals align and that this is, this inventory is accurate and robust. And then we'll publicize the finalized tool through community engagement to our municipal staff, land trusts, etc., and make sure everyone knows about the tool. I'll just briefly note that because we have never attempted a project quite like this, we do expect some delays and modifications as we go along. We're sort of trying to build the plane as we're flying it, so we appreciate your patience and understanding. We might come back to you in a few months with a slightly different plan than we're seeing today, but fortunately, this grant allows a good amount of flexibility with the timing and the scope, so there's no worries there. So if you're here today, that's because you are one of our stakeholders, one of our partners. I'll briefly go over what we sort of envision each role of these partners playing. So our town clerks, city clerks, municipal clerks will be essential in helping us access and conduct research in the land records. Savannah Nicole is going to talk about that a little bit later, and more specifically what that looks like. Now, not every town we know has a GIS or IT department, but for those that do, they can provide the shape files to us and important mapping resources for open space. that we may not know about or have documented. They could also confirm whether or not what we already have is accurate. Our land use staff is going to be so important here. We'll be working with them to access our planning commissions and conservation commissions. Planning commissions are statutorily tasked with maintaining an open space map in their POCD. And conservation commissions are required to keep an index of all open space in the municipality, although we understand that not every town may have a conservation commission. And land trusts and water companies are also really, really important to us. They might have data about their land holdings that the municipality doesn't. So we want to ensure we're not just working with open space that's, you know, sort of on the municipal radar, but really everything that's in the town. And this slide is just another way of viewing it, of the sort of the three major tasks that we're going to be asking our partners for help with: sharing information, accessing land records, and verifying and obtaining GIS data. So we'll dive into that. The first one is information sharing. So we're asking our land use staff, commissions, land trusts, and water companies to share any information they have about open space parcels. There are several documents we can already access by ourselves, like the POCDs we mentioned. And if you guys have a, a public facing viewer, but other data sets aren't necessarily public facing. So for instance, a land trust might have their own GIS application to track their parcels, but don't necessarily have an online portal that corresponds with that. In general, what we're looking for sort of falls into 4 categories. Certainly, we'd love to have any GIS information you have access to. Glenda will be speaking about that shortly, what we actually are looking for. Next, any documentation of legal protections like deeds or easements could be helpful. We should be able to find everything we need in the land records, but if you have some key documents that you want to share with us, that can save us some time. And then the final 2 categories, are maybe the most important, will be our specific questions, because not everything will be available in the documents. So, we might have some sort of documentation that says, this open space must allow public access, but it doesn't quite say where. So we would turn to you guys, the experts who are the boots on the ground, to tell us, here's where the access is. We also want to know what your questions are. If you say, hey, we've been bedeviled for years by where exactly this easement begins and ends on this key property, that's something we want to know so we can make sure to help you with that. So this is going to be a really valuable exercise to help us fill in the blanks. With that, I am pleased to introduce Savannah Nicole to discuss our work with the municipal land records.
Thanks, Christine. So as Christine mentioned, one way that we'll identify gaps in our understanding of open space will be to utilize land records to identify the specific protection mechanism in instances of parcel uncertainty. As a land use planner by trade, that comment makes me smile, because we know that there's lots of uncertainty when we're looking at individual parcels. So what we'll do is we'll cross-reference our open space maps with the resources that Christine mentioned, and so did Aaron: the Plan of Conservation and Development open space map, the Conservation Commission's open space inventory when applicable. We'll look at what the land trusts and water companies have. And then, just as I said, in instances in which the protection mechanism hasn't been identified or needs verification, to Christine's point about maybe wanting to clarify boundaries of an easement or whatnot, we hope to visit the land records to identify which mechanisms are in place, if any. So I'm happy to see some town clerks in our audience. I look forward to getting to know you better and bring in a sweet treat when we pop in to look at your land records. So my section's simple. I'll now hand it off to Glenda Prentice, who's our GIS program coordinator, to discuss how we will obtain GIS data.
Okay, you can go to the next slide, Christine. Thank you. So as Christine and Aaron have showcased, we have a fairly robust open space spatial layer that we've collected over the last 20 years, but we haven't verified the accuracy and the protection level of a lot of the properties. Next slide, please. We need a better understanding of the protection level of each property. While all these properties shown in orange or green could be classed as open space, it's the protection level that's important with regard to open space planning, since without protection, there's no guarantee that they will remain open space in the future. Next slide, please. Previously, we relied on what we were told by the source of the data, or we made assumptions. We presumed that the state forest, water company land, class 1 or 2, or land trust land were protected. Next slide, please. And that private recreation clubs are not protected. This isn't always the case. Private clubs could, in some cases, have put protective measures on their property. Conversely, land trusts may have some parcels that were donated to them that they plan to sell off to acquire more favorable properties. So we want to improve on this. Next slide. In cases where only a portion of the parcel is protected, we need to know the exact delineation of the easement. As this sketch shows, only the left and the right hatched areas have conservation easement. The center portion is a privately owned residence. So by researching these deeds, we'll be able to adjust or add in the areas that are to be included in the protected open space areas. Next slide, please. The final product will be a spatially accurate and, most importantly, record the level of legal protection, which is our end goal. So any GIS files, I'll be reaching out to the towns to just be sure that we have the same GIS files in our possession, that they have any other information in GIS files that we can incorporate into our layer. So now I'll turn it over to Rich Crowther.
Sorry, I'm just going to stop screen.
The senior GIS analyst with NVCOG, and I made a online viewer. As you see on your screen, it's interactive. The main reason for constructing this viewer is so all our stakeholders can easily go and verify what we have currently, and eventually there'll be the working layer will be involved. And you just click on the parcel and see that what we currently have for information in the open space. Also included is the CAMA data that we collect from the towns every year. So owner type is only updated once a year, so that might not be completely correct, but it would be the most recent data as of May or April of each year. Currently shown is open space by function type that we currently have by what we consider function, listed here in the legend. And you could turn each layer on and off by clicking eyeball. It's the same data set, just represented in a different way. Here's who currently owns it. And then if you only want to visit view municipal only, and open space by commitment type. We're also open to suggestion if you want a layer like municipal only for like land trust or water company or any of the like, we could help single that out for you. We've also included the National Natural Diversity Database areas to see where there's habitat that should be conserved. And you could also, there's information on how to use this viewer in case you do have any questions, or you can contact me, and I will hand it back to Christine.
Great, thank you, Rich. I am gonna share my screen again, and I'll just keep this up here for, oh no, it started at the beginning. Let me try that again, because I certainly do not want to go backwards here. Let's see, share screen. Thank you for bearing with me, I'm sorry. From current slide, let's try that. Much better. So I'll keep this up. Oh, go ahead.
Yep, sorry. Just want to explain the QR code is, the app is also mobile friendly. So you can view it on your phone, and this is the QR code you can scan if you want. This slide will be available afterwards if you don't get a chance to scan it right now. Also, the app is available on the NVCOG website. This is direct page where you can find it under interactive map, or it's under the map gallery on the home page.
Perfect. Thank you, Rich. So yeah, you can scan this with your phone, or maybe somebody could put the link in the chat. One of our staff could put that link in the Zoom chat, would be amazing. And for now, we'll just wrap up with our next couple slides here. So here's our next steps. We're hoping to work with 1 or 2 towns at a time over the course of this 2-year project. We're already several months into it. And you can expect outreach from NVCOG staff as we're working on your town. There are different levels of outreach we may conduct depending on our needs and your needs. It might be as simple as an email with some requests, or it might be a request for us to come present at a regular meeting of one of your groups. So please just stay tuned for that. We're already actually working with a few of our first communities, and we also encourage anyone else who's interested in getting started with us, or who's eager about this project, to reach out. There's my email at the bottom, coneil@nvcogct.gov. Please drop me a line if you want to sort of get in the queue, but if not, we're going to hunt you down because we got to get all 19 municipalities in here. So easy way or the hard way, up to you. And with that, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate that you've taken time out of your day to help us kick this project off. At this point, I'll stop my share, and I'd like to address any questions that may have accumulated in the chat. So just check, looks like some introductions. Okay, first question.
If I may add in the meantime, sorry, Christine, we are currently working with the DEEP and state partners on land that they currently own to review.
No one is safe from us.
Yeah.
So, okay, Mary Barton, I see, has a question about what properties the town has received, or what about the properties the town has received due to foreclosure? The town considers them open space, but not so designated on the deed. Some parcels are wet and some are not, possibly could be sold by the town in the future. How would you designate these properties? Looks like we already had one response here from Thomas saying, in Shelton, parcels acquired for preservation are referred to as open space. For parcels the city has acquired through foreclosure or other means, those are referred to as municipal parcels, or if undeveloped, transitory open space. We have land banked parcels that were open and are now being prepared for economic development. That's great to know. That's pretty thorough. Now, maybe Aaron, would you be able to address this question?
So, I mean, I think it's a good question. I think towns sometimes are reluctant to put permanent protections on properties because they want to sort of leave options open in the future. So, the data schema that we're using is pretty agnostic about that. So, we can, if you want it included, we can include it. It would not be considered protected if there's no, restriction on it, or the sustainable CT considers, so, and we've sort of thought through this a little bit, considers municipal property that, there's some municipal document pointing to it as open space. So if there's a property that the town owns that's, a park or whatever, if it's in a POCD or some other municipal document saying this is going to be protected for the future, or if it's a park and, that we would probably consider protected open space.
That's great. Thank you so much, Aaron. Nancy next wrote, can we get a copy of the schema? Are you referring to just what we displayed on the slides, or are you looking for something a little more thorough, Nancy? I don't know if you're able to unmute. We'll certainly share the slides with everyone who's been here today. Yes.
We were looking to see if we might be able to get a copy of the schema, even with if you have it populated with the Bristol information, if we could get that so that we could work off of that? Or even a template of sorts so that we could merge the information that we have into it?
I will
Yeah,
send-
absolutely. I
send a
think there's no
GIS
problem.
file Of the, sorry, Christine, I'll send a GIS file of the, which will have that attribute table with it.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. Good start for
If-
us.
If other towns want that, please put your email address in the chat, so maybe Glenda could follow up with anyone who's interested in getting the more detailed schema. Thanks, Glenda. Mary asked also, how about if the property is all wet and highly unlikely to be sold? Let's see, Aaron.
I think we're really interested in seeing how those properties are protected and if they are or are not protected. I think, you know, as unlikely as that may be, you know, I don't know if we can consider it protected for long-term planning purposes.
Thank you, Aaron. I see that Carl has his hand up. Yes, Carl.
Thanks, Christine. I just wanted to say hello and introduce myself. Carl Honkinen with the U.S. Forest Service. As Christine mentioned, this project is funded through a congressionally designated spending authority to the Regional Planning Commission. So I'm happy to be the project manager for this. I will kind of be the person behind the curtain, so you probably won't see or hear from me much, other than Christine getting annual reports submitted and all that kind of payment acknowledgements and such. So I just want to say hello. This is a very different project from the forest restoration work that I normally do, but happy to support your efforts, and we'll work with Christine and staff to make sure it goes seamlessly. So congratulations and good luck with the project.
That's great. Thank you so much, Carl. We're glad you could be here. I see that Maria has said, from a land trust perspective, land is only truly protected when there is language in the deed or easement that shows perpetual forever protection. Aaron, does that align with the sustainable CT or standards?
Yeah, for the most part. And, you know, there was only that exception made for municipal property because, you know, it seemed that a lot of the municipalities that we worked with had a lot of property that didn't have easements or deed restrictions, but were really considered open space, protected open space as a park or as another, you know, sort of perpetual open space.
Perfect. John, please go ahead and unmute.
Good afternoon. So I'm the real estate manager for the Regional Water Authority in New Haven, and I also sit on the Open Space Review Board for the state. We had a subcommittee that looked at what the definition of open space should be in anticipation for the next state green plan that will be coming up sometime soon. And it was quite a lively discussion. I'm not going to bore you with everything here, but it brought up a lot of, you know, what ifs. And the chair at the time, who was Eric Hammerling, who was at CFPA, he's now moved on to DEEP, you know, would throw out different scenarios to us, like, does a cemetery count? Does a municipally owned golf course count? If there's a municipally owned park count? Well, what about if the park allows for educational use and all of a sudden they put an elementary school there? Was that open space or is it not open space? All these are fascinating, and I just throw them out as rhetorical questions here, but they do show the gray areas for all this. And I know the COG will come up with an answer that is right for the COG, but I do think it's an interesting question in the broad scheme of things.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. I think what we're hoping to do is not so much come up with the answer to that really murky question, but I think and correct me, my other staff, if I'm wrong here, is we're just trying to track what the town considers to be open space, and the land trusts and the water companies who we're working with, and then look further into, okay, well then what does it say legally? Is it actually protected forever? Or, you know, Shelton, I'm kind of intrigued by what Thomas mentioned about this, like, transitory municipal land, transitory open space. So other staff, feel free to add if I missed anything.
You know, I think that's right. And, you know, the schema that we're using allows for, all of those things to be tracked and, designated whether or not it is legally protected or not legally protected. And it gives a lot of flexibility about how we can sort of pull certain things out or, analyze certain types of properties with, using that, those attributes in the data table.
Thank you. Thomas.
Hi, folks. Tom Harbinson. I chair the Conservation Commission in Shelton and had made a few comments in the chat. Referring to the parcel that we have identified on our legend of maps as transitory open space. It was a very large parcel of land that was acquired from City Trust back in the 80s and had always been land banked for future economic development because it was in a corridor where we were going to have a main artery road. And that is currently under site work to prepare for building sites. So there are properties that may have the feel of open space, but are not preserved as open space. And so for us in Shelton, our open space plan and open space maps, we're pretty deliberate in identifying open space as really public open space. It's not the public, when they hear the word open space, tends to consider it as being either open for public use, enjoyment, walking, hiking, and so on, or it's preserved somehow, and that's not always the case. So what we have begun to do in our references for our opinion letters of conservation is to refer to the set-asides of open space where they're preserved as preserves. And that is pretty clear with the term that it's a property that has been preserved in some fashion through the deed to remain in its natural state. We did purchase a lot of water utility land, Class 3 watershed, back in the late 90s. And with that purchase, there was a deed restriction on the accumulation of acreage that 85% of it had to be used for passive recreation use. So that did allow us to, with the excess acreage, to build a new intermediate school. But those kind of easements on lands is, I think, just as important as whether the property is outright deed restricted. So whether it's a pedestrian easement, which only allows hiking but not biking, or if it's some sort of easement of protection so that trees aren't cut down, but there's no public access. I think all of those are just as important in creating greenway corridors that serve certain purposes.
That's great. Thank you so much, Thomas. And yes, we hope to capture as much of that as possible. And as you saw before, we do have, multiple fields. So we can say, primary function, secondary function, public access, yes or no, and all still have it be counted as open space.
I had one further question, if I may.
Please.
Some of the properties in our town that we have identified that we would like to become public preserved open spaces. We have identified those internally, but we don't really reveal those to the general public because when you're entering into a land negotiation of purchase, you don't want to show your hand, so to speak. So how would we identify properties that could serve in the future a very valued environmental or recreational component, but we don't want to let developers know that, hey, this is a property we're really targeting, we're really interested in, in terms of executive session issues that we deal with when we're talking about acquiring properties.
Absolutely. I think that what we're trying to accomplish with the current amount of funding and the current scope of the grant is to create an inventory of what exists right now, whether it's protected or unprotected. If your town considers it open space, we'll look at it. If you have sort of fingered a parcel that is currently privately owned, I think that might be something for an open space plan, and we're not quite there yet. So I'm not sure that it would have, your sort of wish list might not have a place in this document. I just want to check with my other staff and see if they agree with that.
I will say this is always going to be ongoing project. It's not just for 2 years. If you start adding more open space parcels to your inventory, we'll take those 3, 4, 10 years from now. So as soon as they become open space, please let us know and we'll add them to our inventory.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Anyone else with questions for us? I just want to Oh boy, let's see if I can do it right this time. I just wanted to briefly share my screen at the very end again. And from current slide, let's see if I don't mess it up. Okay, that's the contact information. If you wanted to follow up with questions to any of us, specifically about GIS, you can reach out to Glenda, specifically about records, land records, and the sort of municipal land use side of it. There's SN's information or general questions you can feel free to direct to me. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We'll be following up to send you the slides, and if you put your name in the chat, your email in the chat, we'll follow up with the schema as well. Thank you, and enjoy your Monday afternoon. Take care.